Have you ever watched your child sit quietly at a family gathering, surrounded by laughter and conversation, yet no one calls their name, no one invites them into the group photo? As if your child is just a guest in their own family? And you sit there saying nothing, just feeling something inside you slowly start to break? My name is Allison, and I never thought I'd be the one telling this story, because for years I tried to do the right thing. I tried to keep the warmth in our home, tried to teach my son a lie that grown-ups aren't always fair. But if you live kindly, love will find its way back to you. I used to believe that, especially after I remarried Michael, the first man who made me believe that a child could be loved like his own, even if they didn't share the same blood. When he legally adopted Eli, I cried. Not out of fear, but because I truly believed my son finally had a home that was whole. But I forgot one thing. One father's love can't speak for an entire family. Michael's mother, Helen, was the picture of a traditional Southern woman. Graceful, proper, and deeply rooted in the belief that blood matters. She never once said Eli wasn't her grandchild. But it was everything she didn't say that stayed with me. Every major holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, her birthday, she hosted at her old house in Savannah. Long tables, embroidered linens, the good china that only came out for special occasions. And at those tables there was always one chair I came to think of as the silent chair. No one said it was for Eli. But every year it was the extra chair brought in last, tucked at the edge of the table, no name card, no personalized drink like the other kids. And Eli would quietly sit there, like he already knew he wasn't part of the main picture. I'll never forget the year he turned 8. I asked him to make a little gift for Grandma Helen. He drew a picture of our family standing beside a Christmas tree, Helen, Michael, me, and himself. He sealed it carefully, wrote her name on the envelope, and handed it to her before dinner started. She glanced at it, smiled politely, like someone receiving a utility bill, and placed it next to a stack of store coupons. Just then Maddie, her biological granddaughter, walked into the room with a tin of cookies. Helen hugged her tight, laughed loud, and said, "Goodness, this girl is as thoughtful as her mama." Eli said nothing. He walked back to his silent chair, still holding the picture that never got hung up. His eyes fixed on the candle flickering in the center of the table. For a long time I asked myself, was I being too sensitive? Maybe Helen didn't mean anything by it. Maybe she just didn't know how. But over the years I came to see it clearly. Children may not speak up, but they see everything. They see who gets hugged, who's called by a nickname, who's invited to say grace, and who isn't. And when I saw my son start to go quiet, stop expecting anything, I knew something in him was slowly closing. I used to think if I just kept showing up, kept giving love, eventually someone would recognize it and return it. But I've learned the hard way. If you keep staying silent, you might be teaching your child that being left out is something they're supposed to endure. And that, I couldn't allow to continue. I don't know if Helen ever meant to hurt Eli. But I do know this, there was one person who always saw it all, Michael. My husband. The man who had always chosen peace was starting to change. Quietly but unmistakably. And that change would lead to something no one in the family ever expected. Especially not in the holidays that followed. A father torn between peace and justice. I used to think Michael was the most easygoing person I'd ever known. He didn't like conflict, never raised his voice, never forced his opinion on anyone. When I was upset, he wouldn't try to fix it with words. He'd simply make me a cup of tea, sit beside me, and rest his hand gently on my shoulder as if to say, "I'm here whenever you're ready to talk." Maybe that's why I kept hoping, every time Eli was overlooked, that Michael would say something. Just once. That he'd speak up and tell his mother that our son deserved the same kind of love as any other child in the family. But year after year he stayed silent. I remember one evening after we got home from Helen's birthday party, Eli went straight to his room without saying a word. When I checked on him later, he'd already fallen asleep, clutching the same stuffed bear he'd held onto for months. On his desk sat the gift he never got to give her. A small clay keychain in the shape of a heart, with Nana written across it in glittery gold pen. Downstairs, Michael was washing dishes in the dim light of the kitchen. I spoke softly, careful not to break the quiet. "Did you notice Eli didn't even get mentioned during the toast? Maddie got hugged twice. Jonah got that rare book she found for him. And Eli, he got, 'Oh, you're here too?' Michael set the dish down. He didn't turn around. He just said quietly, "I noticed." I waited. Finally I asked, "Then why didn't you say anything?" He turned to me, and his face looked tired in a way that had nothing to do with the dishes, like he was trying to hold something inside that had been cracking for a long time. "Because if I say something, it'll hurt her. She'll think I'm choosing you and Eli over her. And I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready to break everything." I nodded. I understood. I used to feel that way too. But I'm a mother. And I could see it clearly now. My son was beginning to believe that maybe he didn't really belong. Michael wasn't unloving. He had his own way of showing it. He made bunny-shaped pancakes every Sunday. He was the first to run when Eli fell off his bike, scooping him up and whispering, "It's okay. Dad's here." But around his mother, Michael became the youngest son again, the one who wanted peace more than anything, the one who still hoped for approval. The truth is, a lot of good men grew up in families where keeping the peace mattered more than doing what was right. They were raised to believe silence was love, that holding it together was enough. But if that silence means letting your own child be quietly hurt, is it really worth keeping? One night, while I was folding laundry in the living room, Eli came up to me. His voice was barely louder than a whisper slipping through a door frame. "Mom, why doesn't Grandma hug me like she hugs Maddie?" I couldn't answer. Michael had just walked in from the kitchen and stopped in the doorway. Eli looked at his dad. "Do you see it too?" Michael didn't flinch. He walked over, knelt down to Eli's level and said slowly, "Yes, I see it. And I promise, you won't have to ask that question ever again." That night, Michael didn't say another word to me about it. But the next morning, he printed another copy of Eli's adoption papers, placed them in a small wooden box, and wrapped it carefully in red paper. He handed it to Eli and said, "If there's ever a day you feel like you're not being treated as part of this family, you can give this to Grandma. You don't need to explain anything. Just give her the box. That's enough." I didn't expect him to do that. But when I looked into Eli's eyes and saw for the first time something that looked like confidence, I realized Michael had made his choice. Not against his mother, but for the child who needed him most. What do you think about fathers like Michael, gentlemen who stay silent because they think it's the kindest thing to do, even when their children feel invisible because of it? If you've ever known someone like that, or been someone like that, please share your story in the comments. Someone out there might need to know they're not alone in feeling this way. And then, Christmas came around again. With its gifts, its traditions, and one candle placed in front of Eli, along with a small tag that made my heart quietly break all over again. The Christmas candle and the empty name tag. As a mother, I always believed that if you plan things well enough, put in enough love, enough intention, then holidays would become beautiful memories. I used to think that as long as I packed cute matching outfits, wrapped gifts carefully, and reminded my son to smile for the camera, then maybe, just maybe, even the worst moments could be softened with cookies and warm apple cider. But that Christmas proved something else to me. Some wounds, no matter how neatly you wrap them with red ribbon, can no longer be hidden. I still remember the cold weight in my chest when I saw that candle. A small one in a plain glass jar with a lavender label and a folded white tag. Every other child, Maddie, Jonah, Sam, was called up by name one by one to receive their gifts from Helen. An iPad, a brand new pair of shoes, a premium art kit. And then there was Eli. She didn't say his name. Not really. Instead she said, "This is just a little something for Michael's boy." Didn't want him to feel completely left out. For a second, the entire room went silent. I swear I could hear the sound of a knife touching china louder than the Christmas music playing in the background. Eli stood up. He didn't look at me, didn't ask any questions. He just walked over, took the candle from her hands, and returned to his seat. I glanced down at the tag. There was no name. No to Eli. No love, Grandma. Just 4 words, for Michael's boy. In that moment, it felt like I was falling into an invisible pit. Like every ounce of effort I'd made over the years to hold the peace had suddenly meant nothing at all. I looked at Michael. He was sitting upright, hands clasped tightly, eyes fixed on Eli. And Eli, he didn't cry. But that silence hurt more than 100 tears. After dinner, I pulled Michael into the kitchen. My voice was low but firm. "You need to say something." I can't let our son feel like that again. Not one more time. Michael looked at me. After a moment, he replied with just one sentence. I think Eli is ready. I blinked. Ready for what? And then he reminded me of something I had nearly forgotten. The red box. The small wooden box Michael had prepared months ago, holding a copy of the adoption papers, a family photo, and a letter he had written to his mother. I told Eli, Michael said softly, if there ever came a time when he felt like he wasn't truly part of this family, he could give her the box. Eli had never brought it up again since the day Michael gave it to him. But that Christmas night when we got home, I watched my son place the candle on the table, and then quietly reach into the drawer, pull out the red box and set it beside it. I sat down and gently took his small hand in mine. What do you want to do with the box, sweetheart? He didn't look at me. He just said, in the same calm voice kids use when they talk about school assignments, I'm going to give it to Grandma. Tomorrow. At brunch. I had never heard him sound so certain. Not angry. Not bitter. Just decided. Have you ever seen a child reach the point where they no longer need someone's approval? Only the chance to speak their truth out loud? If you've ever stood beside a child like that, or if you were once that child, I'd love if you shared your story. Because I truly believe there are so many people still carrying the hurt of being treated like a guest in their own family. And the next morning, the last family brunch we would ever attend, Eli buttoned up his favorite blue shirt, smoothed down his hair, and placed the red box into his small satchel like it was something sacred. As for me, I just watched him. And I knew whatever was about to happen, my son had finally chosen to stand up for himself. The last brunch and the letter on the table. That morning, no one said anything out of the ordinary. The sky was clear, the breeze was light, and the air still held that crisp, comforting chill of a Savannah winter. Michael wore a white button-down. I put on the floral dress Helen had once called tasteful. And Eli chose the same shirt he wore on Christmas. I had combed his hair gently to the side. Most importantly, the red box rested in his hands, a quiet reminder no one needed to speak aloud. We arrived at Helen's house right on time. Everything inside was just as it always was, the table set with fresh linens, the smell of baked ham and cinnamon waffles drifting from the kitchen. Helen stood at the far end of the room, embracing Maddie with a wide, beaming smile. When she turned to me, she offered only a small nod. As for Eli, she glanced at him briefly, then turned away, as if he were just another regular guest she'd seen at too many gatherings to bother greeting. I noticed something that morning. The usual sting in my chest wasn't anger anymore. It was stillness. Like I had already expected this, and instead of being hurt, I simply observed. And I saw that my son was doing the same, not looking for eye contact, not hoping for acknowledgement. Just sitting there, hands resting on the box in his lap. The brunch carried on as usual. People laughed, exchanged stories about gifts and vacations, asked about the kids' schools. No one seemed to notice Eli hadn't said a single word. No one seemed to see the red box placed carefully next to his plate. Until dessert was served, and Helen sat at the head of the table, holding her usual glass of white wine to give her closing toast. When Eli quietly stood up, the room fell silent. He walked slowly to her, placed the red box in front of her, and returned to his seat without saying a word. No glare. No blame. Just a small, quiet act that suddenly made the air in the room feel heavy. Helen raised an eyebrow, clearly confused. "What's this?" she asked, her voice keeping its usual lightness. Eli didn't respond. Michael squeezed my hand under the table. Helen began to unwrap the box, very slowly, almost like she was stalling, resisting whatever moment was now unfolding. When she finally lifted the lid, the first thing she saw was a simple white photo frame. It was a picture of Michael holding Eli the day his adoption was finalized. Eli was 2 years old, frosting still on his cheeks, smiling like sunshine. Beneath the photo was a handwritten letter. I had never seen Helen so still. She read each line unblinking. Her face turned pale. Her lips pressed tightly together, like she was trying to hold on to whatever pride she had left. But as she reached the end of the letter, I noticed her hand tremble. "Mom, if you're holding this letter, it means that Eli, your grandson, has once again felt like he doesn't belong. I've waited, I've hoped that one day you would see him the way I do. As part of you. But if you can't say his name, if all you see is Michael's boy, then from now on I won't let him keep trying to earn love in this family. He already deserved it. Helen folded the letter, placed the photo frame down on the table, and slowly stood. "You are unbelievable," she whispered. But this time there was no fire in her voice. Only something cracked and tired. "You let a child do this just to shame me?" Michael stood too, calmly, quietly. "No one is trying to shame you, Mom. But you made Eli feel like he wasn't your grandson. All he did was return the truth to the adults in the room." No one said a word after that. No arguing. No defending. Just the ticking of the wall clock, and the quiet sound of a glass being set on a saucer. I looked over at Eli. He wasn't smiling. But his face was peaceful. Calm, as if he'd finally said something he'd been carrying inside for years. Have you ever witnessed a child protect their dignity? Not by yelling or causing a scene, but with a small, undeniable act that spoke louder than words? If you have, or if you were once that child, I'd be honored if you'd share your story. Because sometimes the quietest children are the strongest of all. We never went back to Helen's house after that. There was no blow-up. No angry texts. No tears or goodbyes. Just silence between people who had finally learned where the line had been drawn. Legacy isn't blood. It's how we're chosen. There was no apology. No last-minute hug, no phone call to make things right. After that brunch, Helen never reached out again. And we didn't either. First I thought Eli would ask. That he'd wonder. That one night he'd sit by the window and ask why Grandma no longer sent Christmas cards, or why his birthday came and went without a single call. But what surprised me most was that he never asked. He lived lighter. No more nerves before the holidays. No more wondering what gift might earn points. No more scanning the room to see if someone would call his name during the family photo. One late afternoon, as I was folding laundry in our room, I saw Eli standing in front of the mirror, wearing a small silver bracelet. Asked, "Where did you get that?" Eli smiled. "Maddie sent it. There's a letter too." In the letter, Maddie wrote, "I'm sorry I didn't understand everything before. All I know is, to me you've always been my cousin. I bought this bracelet with my allowance. I hope you like it." I don't remember when my eyes started to blur. Not out of sadness, but because I realized, even if not everyone in the family had changed, just one person seeing him, really seeing him, was enough to show Eli he was worthy. From then on, we created our own traditions. Small ones, but they were ours. Friday night homemade pizza. Each birthday we wrote letters to our future selves for the next year. At Christmas, Eli picked gifts for our neighbors, always adding a handwritten note in colorful marker. No need for a tall tree or matching table runners. No perfect photos or rehearsed toasts. Just the feeling of belonging. Michael kept the photo of Eli holding the red box tucked in a journal where he records the little things. Eli's height, his changing interests, the strange questions he asks when brushing his teeth. One evening I asked him, "Do you ever regret it? Letting it go this far?" He shook his head. "No. I only regret not doing something sooner." I understood. I felt the same. I used to think that if I just stepped back a little, things would stay together. But I've learned, some steps backward don't preserve anything. They just make our children drift further from the love they deserve. We talk about blood like it's unshakable. But for me, family has never been about DNA. Family is who sits next to your child when they're hurting. Who says their name when others look away. Who chooses to love, not out of duty but because they mean it. Eli grew up in that space. He stopped searching for approval because he learned how to choose where he belongs. And that is the greatest gift a child can carry through life. I still keep the red box. It rests in the drawer by my bed, next to the first birthday card Eli ever drew for me, and the tiny button-down shirt he wore the day Michael adopted him. I don't keep it to remember the pain. I keep it so I never forget the quiet strength a child can have when just one person chooses to stand beside them. If this story reminded you of someone, a forgotten child, a father who stayed silent too long, or even a younger version of yourself wondering whether you were ever truly loved, feel free to leave a comment below, because sometimes just telling your story is how you get your voice back. And if you want to hear more true, quiet stories about people who've been hurt, but slowly found their worth again, please subscribe to this channel. We tell the kind of stories most people overlook, But everyone has lived. Because sometimes it's not blood that makes a family. It's the people who choose you. Pushpin, thank you for staying with me until the very end. I hope to see you again in the next story.